Garlic is incredibly easy to grow, but if a few things go wrong in the very beginning, you might not have the success you're looking for. Join me today as I share with you 10 common mistakes made when planting garlic. Hi, I'm Gardener Scott, and I've grown garlic for many years. This is the bed that I'll be growing garlic in for this next year. I already have the bulbs picked out, ready to go, and they'll go in the ground in just a couple weeks. And this is where the first common mistake comes in: choosing the wrong variety of garlic for your particular garden. There are two basic types of garlic. There are hardneck varieties and there are softneck varieties. And generally, for areas with severe winters, well, the hardneck varieties are going to do better in that cold. For areas with warm winters, well, softneck varieties are going to do better. And if you're trying to grow garlic in zone 8 or above, you're going to have difficulty unless you choose a variety specifically for those really warm winters, like a Creole garlic. So, just realize you can't grow every garlic in every garden. You have to do a little bit of research to find out which one will do best in yours. Another very common mistake is planting garlic at the wrong time. Now, most of us know that typically we put garlic in the ground in fall for summer harvest. But fall encompasses many months. So what's the right time? This is where the problem comes in. If we put the garlic in too early, roots start developing and then a plant grows. Well, the clove only has a certain amount of energy to promote that plant growth. And if there's a lot of growth before winter sets in, well, then the winter is going to kill all those leaves. In the spring, the clove will probably still be viable, but it might not have that much energy to really produce a robust plant. If we put the clove in too late, well, then we're not getting enough root development. And come spring, the plant is playing catch up. It has to grow roots, then it has to grow a plant, and then we get a garlic bulb that probably isn't the size we're looking for. So ideally, we want to put the clove in the ground about 4 weeks before we're expecting our ground to freeze. That gives about 2 weeks for the clove to wake up in a moist soil and start sending out roots, and about 2 to 3 weeks for those roots to develop. But that's not enough time to send up a plant. So when the ground starts to freeze, the clove and the roots begin to go into dormancy, which is exactly what we want. Usually, just after our first frost in fall is about the time we think about putting cloves in the ground, because for many of us, that's about a month before those freezing conditions start affecting our soil. Another mistake is not preparing the soil ahead of time. Garlic really prefers a good, well-draining, organically rich soil. And especially if you have a dense clay soil, you need to amend it with organic matter. So this bed, I amended it pretty well with compost and other organic matter about 2 weeks ago. And I still have another 2 to 3 weeks before planting to give time for those soil organisms to begin breaking down the organic matter and preparing the bed for the future plants. Take the time to get your soil ready. Then when you put the cloves in, you're really giving them the best chance for success. And another problem crops up when you are preparing your soil, if you're using fertilizer as one of those amendments. If you use too much fertilizer, well, it has a drastic effect on the plant. Too much nitrogen will cause a lot of leaf growth at the expense of the bulb growth. So try to avoid excessive nitrogen fertilizers when you're preparing your bed. With a lot of organic matter, you probably don't need fertilizers at all. But if you choose to fertilize, use a nice balanced fertilizer like a 10-10-10 and stay away from those high nitrogen ones. There is a correlation to the size of the clove that you plant and the size of the bulb that you harvest. If you plant a big clove, you're more likely to get a big bulb. And if you plant a small clove, well, even when you do everything right, you're more likely to get a small bulb. So go ahead and start by just planting the bigger cloves in the beginning. A lot of soft neck varieties have a lot of cloves in the bulb that you break apart to plant. Well, many of them are small. Just go ahead and use them in the kitchen. Plant the big ones. Those small cloves will grow into a plant, but the plant is going to be smaller and the bulb is going to be smaller. Another problem when planting cloves is to plant them upside down. There's actually a flat end to the clove. That's where the roots develop. And there's a pointy end to the clove. That's where the leaves are going to emerge. If you plant it upside down, it's still going to grow, but remember that energy in the clove? A lot of that energy is going to be in growing a plant that has to grow down and then sideways and then back up again. A lot of wasted energy for that clove. Even if you put the clove in sideways, you're wasting some energy as the plant struggles to grow up like it should. So plant it like a little rocket ship with the flat side down and the pointy side up, and all the clove's energy will go into producing a good plant. The spacing of the cloves creates another problem, and the mistake is planting the cloves too close together. Ideally, we're looking for about 6 inches apart, because remember, this little clove is going to grow into a bigger bulb. And if you did the soil right and the conditions are right and you planted those bigger cloves to start with, you might get some pretty big bulbs of garlic. Well, if they're too close together, they're going to be competing for soil nutrients and moisture. So give them room to grow by spacing them far enough apart that they're happy and can grow into the big bulb you're looking for. Another mistake is planting the clove at the wrong depth. We really should be looking to have the base of the clove about 3 inches deep. We're looking for about 2 inches of soil above the top of the clove. And this is good for a couple reasons. If the clove is too shallow, well, especially in those regions with harsh winters and then warming conditions, you get a freeze-thaw cycle. And that freezing and thawing of the soil is enough to push the clove out of the ground. That's a bad thing. Also, we want the clove to stay as evenly moist as possible during the growing season. If it's too shallow, well, it's more likely that the surface of the soil is going to dry out, and that will affect the growth of the plant that clove is supporting. You can plant the clove deeper, but it is going to take more energy from that clove for the plant to emerge. So about 2 to 3 inches deep should be enough for most of us. Another mistake many gardeners make at planting is not mulching after putting the cloves in the ground. Use about 4 to 6 inches of a light mulch like straw or grass clippings or dried leaves. It does some important things. First, it helps keep the soil moist during that critical phase of root development. And it really helps moderate the soil temperature over the winter. So that freeze-thaw cycle that could push the cloves out of the ground is greatly reduced when you use mulch. And because garlic tends to have relatively shallow roots, weeds can be a big problem as they compete for those soil resources. Well, the mulch cuts down on that potential weed growth. Leave it in place all winter long. In spring, you can brush it aside to let the beds warm up a little bit faster, but then move it back over the plants as they continue to grow. Stick around after this 10th mistake for a bonus tip about growing garlic. And this 10th common mistake is that the bed is in the wrong location. Garlic really needs a lot of sun. If you can get 10 hours of sun a day, your garlic is going to grow the best that it can. Less than that, and the bulbs are not going to develop as well because the plants aren't going to develop as well. So if you put your bed in a shady spot, don't be surprised if you get smaller bulbs of garlic. Choose a bed in full sun during the growing season and you'll have better results. The bonus tip deals with vernalization. Now, vernalization deals with how many cold days you actually have during the winter. For many of us in zones 4, 5, or 6, we have plenty of freezing days during the winter. Usually the cloves need about 2 months to develop into nice big bulbs. But if you're in zone 7 or 8 or 9, you might not have enough cold days for those bulbs to fully develop. So here's the tip. Take those cloves and put them in the refrigerator before you plant. Store your cloves for a month or 2 in those cold conditions of the refrigerator, then plant them. And if you have a warm winter, you should still get some pretty good bulb development the next year. I'm Gardener Scott. Enjoy gardening.